Hi folks, I've just finished reading Carl Jung's book Man and His Symbols, which was the last book he wrote before he died. In the 1960s it was published. So I thought I'd share some thoughts about Jung's theories about consciousness and about dream interpretation. I find that I'm not really in total alignment with the way he thinks about things. In the Jungian theories, the unconscious seems to be portrayed almost as a kind of helpful big brother who is giving you coded messages in your dreams. Now, I've had all kinds of dreams, and the one thing that I notice about my dreams is that they seem to be a jumbled up mess of things that had been preoccupying my mind while I was awake. I can see that often in my dreams, in those rare times when I actually remember the dreams. Occasionally, of course, a dream does seem to have meaning. I'll give you one example of that that's kind of funny. I once dreamt that I was in a house, which presumably was my house, but it wasn't my house in real life. And I had a dog in the oven. The dog was alive and it was barking, and I had the oven closed. And I turned the oven on, began to cook the dog, and it was barking and going ruff, ruff, like this. Then the dream just cuts, and it's after the dog has been cooked, and the dog is sitting on the table fully cooked, but it just looks like a huge big turkey. Although there seems to be some kind of like diseased pustules all over it, which is really weird. But anyway, as I'm sitting here with this cooked dog, and I can hear my mother coming up the path towards the house. And I'm thinking, oh no, my mum's going to find out that I've been cooking a dog in the oven. So the dream ends there. Now, the dream does actually have meaning because it was to do with guilt and to do with not wanting to be found out about something that I had done. Now, in real life, it wasn't anything terribly serious. I certainly haven't cooked a dog ever, but still the dream had meaning. But here's the thing, it wasn't prophetic. It wasn't giving me a warning. It wasn't saying, stop this or you're going to be caught. Now, you could interpret it that way, but it's really more just a reflection of certain mental preoccupations that are jumbled up in a totally messed up way, because when you're asleep, I guess the brain just isn't functioning at full capacity. So that's why it becomes a mess. Sometimes strange things do appear in your dreams. Like there was one time I dreamt that something was wrong with my toilet, and the whole toilet bowl seemed to become disconnected from the floor. And I lifted it off, and there was like a pool of water in which there were these large goldfish swimming. And I looked away and I looked back, and all of a sudden there was a huge big, like an Egyptian scarab beetle sitting very still. It was about this size, you know, just sitting on the ground very still, and I was frightened of it. Now, what was that doing in my dream? Where did an Egyptian scarab beetle come in my dream? You know, I have no idea. So one of the theories in Jung is that there are what he calls archetypes, and an archetype is something that comes from the collective unconscious, which is another Jungian theory. Now, the collective unconscious is sometimes misunderstood as something metaphysical. It's not that. It's like an inherited consciousness. Genetically inherited. For instance, way back in the mists of time when we were hunter-gatherers, you know, we would have been at the mercy of certain large predators. So this is probably where we still get this sort of fear of monsters and things that a child has, because back then that fear was very real. They literally were monsters, and when you really think about what a monster is, you know, it really is just a thing with big teeth. Because, you know, is there really any difference between The thought of something with fangs and claws that comes out of your cupboard, and a lion with fangs and claws. Not really. The only difference is we put a name on one of these things and we call it a lion, so it's no longer a monster. So, if you were some kind of deep sea diver and you came across a new species that had never been seen before, that was really predatory looking down in the depths of the ocean, well, that's essentially a monster, isn't it? It doesn't have a name. You just found something new that was never been discovered before. And then you put a name on it. You discover that there are more of the same kind, and it's no longer a monster. So something being a monster or not really just an act of labeling when you really think about it. So an archetype is something from the past that is kind of embedded in the mind and is genetically inherited through the centuries. So, in discovering what the significance of a scarab beetle is to my mind, my conscious mind has no recollection of what that means, but way back in the mists of time, a scarab beetle may have symbolized something in particular that my unconscious still knows about. So that's kind of the idea of archetypes. I don't really know whether there's a lot of truth to that. Don't know. There are other things in dreams that give them certain significance that I can certainly attest to. Certain recurrences in dreams, like I've had the occasional recurrence of not being able to walk properly or see properly. Like I'm maybe in the dream I'm standing at a newsagent and I'm trying to look at a magazine and the words are becoming blurred and I'm really struggling to see it and I can't see it. Or I'm walking down the street and all of a sudden I can hardly take one step in front of the other. I can do it, but it's like my feet drag, like they're weighed down by a ton weight. And I'm thinking, how long is it going to take me to walk home? It's only a mile, but oh, it's so much effort to take one step. So I don't know where that comes from or what exactly it means, but it has recurred several times. So I guess it probably means something. But here's the thing, is this my unconscious giving me a message, like some kind of helpful big brother, like another consciousness inside me? I don't think so. Everything I know about the unconscious is that it's more like a robot. That's the word that the author Colin Wilson uses to describe it, and it's a very good word because all the unconscious really does is it looks for repeating patterns in your conscious awareness, and it then tries to take the workload off your mind. In other words, remember when you first began to learn how to type on a keyboard? You had to scan every single key to find the right one and then press it, then scan for the next letter and press it. But eventually your unconscious learned to map the keyboard, and you get to a point, once you type enough, you get to a point that you just have to think of the words, tell your fingers to move, and they just go without you really thinking about where they go. That's the unconscious. So it's a helpful big brother in the sense that it takes the workload off you, but it's totally unconscious. It's like a robot. So I don't subscribe to this idea that consciousness exists anywhere other than right down here in the realm of sense perception, shall we say, in the realm of brain-based thought. So I had another recurring dream one time that was to do with I had moved house and I had accidentally kept one of the keys for my old house after I had moved, and I didn't do anything about it for a long time, but I kept having this recurring dream. When I say I kept having it, I mean I would have had it maybe once every 4 or 5 months or something like that. I had a dream where I would suddenly find myself in that house, the old house, and I'd maybe be sitting watching television or something, or even, sleeping in one of the beds, and I'd suddenly realize, what am I doing here? I don't live here. Why am I here? I got to get out before the owners come in. This sort of thing. And I had it several times, and it never really went away until I decided to go and give the key to the people who live in the house. And I guess that was my mind telling me that there was something left undone, and the dream stopped once I got it done. But again, it's not like there was another consciousness inside me telling me these things. It's just that I was preoccupied. Some part of my mind was preoccupied with the fact that there was this thing undone that really ought to have been done. And so the dream reflected that. So in Man and His Symbols, I mean, there was so much dream analysis, and the analysts were putting all kinds of really specific meanings onto dreams. And I kept thinking as I was reading, how can you be so certain that this is what it really means? So I don't know what your thoughts are on dream interpretation. Nick Dutch shared a funny one recently on his YouTube channel, Bespoke Group UK. He said he was living in America. I can't remember all the exact details, but it was something like he was living in America, and outside the house were lots and lots of these crazy sort of religious fundamentalists, and they all wanted to come in and convert him. And he was shouting through the cat flap, "Go away, go away!" So he was asking for some dream interpretations, and I suggested that maybe this is to do with the fact that he constantly has to deal with crazy people leaving comments on his channel, fundamentalists, you know, telling him you're the slave of Satan, you're going to hell, and all this stuff. And so maybe the dream had to do with a kind of a lingering fear that he has, possibly, that such people in sufficient numbers would be able to cause harm to his life. So I suggested that to him. Someone else suggested that the cat flap was there because it represents a vagina. So, and of course Nick's looking through the cat flap, and you know, I doubt it. I think the cat flap is probably there because Nick has a cat. So this inserted itself into his dream. I mean, for instance, I had a dream recently. I'm almost loath to tell you this one because it's kind of icky. But I had a dream recently where I was sitting in my living room trying to read a book or something, and my dad was sitting on the arm of the chair, and he reached down into his own pocket, but accidentally reached down in the middle of my legs and was fiddling about like he was trying to get something out of his pocket. And I tolerated this for a few seconds, and then I said, "Dad, what are you doing? Get out of it." And I pushed his hand away. Now, a psychologist might go, who knows what kind of interpretation a psychologist or even a dream analyst would put on that. Like, you know, he might be thinking, whoa, this guy was molested when he was a kid, and this is the memories sort of trying to bubble up again so that he can deal with them. No, nothing of the kind. It just so happens that recently, just before I had the dream, there was someone who told me a story that they were driving this bus, and there was a seat beside them, and there was a young kid of maybe 11 or 12 on the seat, and they reached for the gear stick but accidentally put their hand on the child's knee. So, and they instantly went, "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do that." So it was kind of a funny story that this person was sharing. So I guess this was lingering on my mind, and my dad inserted himself into my dream. Well, he didn't. My dad's dead. You know what I mean? He died recently, and that's why I'm dreaming about my dad. Same thing happened when my mum died in 2005. I kept dreaming about her. She kept showing up in my dreams. So imagine a psychologist trying to, you know, extract some meaning about that dream, but I hadn't personally made the connection with the story of the bus driver and with my dad's death. So you see how dream analysis can just go down into some crazy territory that it doesn't even mean. That's because, like I say, all I was experiencing was jumbled up reflections of things that had occupied my conscious attention during recent times. That's all it was. And even when dreams do appear to give you warnings and things, those warnings are probably just reflective of things that are naturally occupying your mind at the time. So there you go. That's my take on Carl Jung's theories and dream analysis in general.